Hello guys, welcome to another video. Rimuru x Eminence in Shadow by elite3532. Chapter 17. I will restart to post, but since IRL work start to get most of my time, also YouTube, I'm going to be less active, but I promise and already vowed myself to multiple people, I will finish this story. One Piece, Classroom of the Elite, Primordial Demon Rimuru, Youngest True Dragon and the rest, most of them will have an ending, that's for sure. Third Pav standing between the Blood Progenitor and the Eminence in Shadow, Rimuru released a totally different aura. The atmosphere around him was knightly before, but now it seemed like a total other person, like a prince. His golden eyes were shaped with predator pupils as he had both of his hands stretched. On his right side he had Shadow's sword tightly gripped, the left had a faint mist coming from his palm. The blood spikes previously sent were all frozen. Everyone could only stare at him in shock. Rimuru. For now, you should take a nap, I have things to deal with. Turning toward Shadow, Rimuru's eyes turned red for a moment, and the instant after, Shadow was sent out of the tower, breaking at the same time the entire top of the tower. Rimuru also made sure to knock Shadow out just in case he had the good idea to come back. Beta and the rest of Shadow Garden members reacted a few seconds later, dumbfounded at how easy their leader was taken out. Rimuru. You guys should also leave before I make you. He voiced out to Beta without looking at her. No, instead his eyes were locked on the Blood Queen. Beta only had a few seconds to think before she felt a heavy pressure unfold upon her. She bit her lips and took her decision. Beta. We retreat. 666. But Beta, no objection, let's go before our luck runs out. Looking down in shame, Beta started walking out while the other three numbers followed reluctantly. Once they were gone, only Yukime was left outside of Rimuru's group and the Blood Queen. Yukime. Well, it seems I have no place here, so I'll take my leave too. Her mouth still hidden behind her fan, she chuckled before walking out. She had seen everything she wanted. And staying with this new Rimuru was way too dangerous. He was already ruthless before, but now there was something new, something more savage and selfish inside him. With that, the fox woman concluded that the risk she incurred here was not worth the show. Once she was gone, Rimuru turned to Mary and the unconscious Claire. Rimuru. What happened? Mary. Well, I don't really know. Snapping out of her daze, she looked down and started narrating what happened. Shadow and Elizabeth were engaged in an intense fight, but suddenly a certain realization struck upon her. Shadow wasn't moving as he wanted as he fought right in front of them, in a position where if he dodged, the Blood Queen's attack would directly be aimed at them. To resume, he was protecting them while fighting. Well, in reality, he was just moving slower as inside his clothes were tons of gold he had stolen from the tower's treasure room. So to not damage them, he had to move at a reasonable speed, though now all those gold coins flew out of the tower alongside him. Anyway, after a small moment of inattention, Elizabeth took Shadow by speed and sent him crashing into the wall. While he was losing up a little, Elizabeth didn't wait and attacked the rest. Her main target was Rimuru's unconscious body. He was dangerous and she knew it, but her attacks were quickly blocked by Claire and Mary. But they weren't strong enough even with the help of Shadow Garden and Yukime. But before another heavy strike could approach Rimuru, something snapped inside Claire. Her eyes turning purple, she got up. Her movement turned faster and more accurately along that, she could now manipulate magic on another level. At that moment she wasn't Claire Kaganu anymore, but a much stronger force. A being that still shared the same sibling bond with Rimuru. Aurora. She took control over Claire's body to gain some time using ancient magic. Actually, the Blood Queen's magic was created by Aurora decades before her birth. Thus, the fight between Aurora and Elizabeth started. Thought it could hardly be considered a fight as Aurora only had a few seconds with this body. But during this lapse of time, she utterly dominated Elizabeth. The Blood Queen was after all a weak copy of her former self. Even so, Aurora didn't have enough time to bring Elizabeth down, even more with Claire's body which is way too weak to withstand her power. So she just had to win some time until Shadow was on his feet again. And surely he did. Shadow came back once he loosened up, starting round 2 with Elizabeth, while Aurora smirked and left Claire's body, giving Rimuru a side look. Her presence here triggered the memories of Rimuru. After disappearing, she didn't reach the afterlife or cycle of reincarnation. After someone like her who is bound to nothingness, after leaving the material world, she adventures around like a spirit. but because she never managed to perfect her control over nothingless energy, so she can't freely move around. Her consciousness is like in a bubble outside the world waiting for a door to open. And those doors are very rare, to the point only one had ever appeared and opened, and this one is Claire, who showed a rather high aptitude for nothingless. It's normally impossible, but she does. With that, Aurora can actually take over her body from time to time. This time, it was Claire's thirst to protect Rimuru. That strong emotion managed to open the door for Aurora. Rimuru. I see. So Aurora can come here through Claire's body, but only under some condition. Rimuru listened carefully to Mary's explanation. He nodded once she was done and readied his sword. Rimuru. As much as I want to see Aurora, this will have to wait. Now it's our turn to dance, blood progenitor Elizabeth. At his words, Elizabeth surprisingly smirked. Her hand raising, she prepared another attack. On the side, Mary watched in shock. She was a vampire and second in command of Elizabeth back centuries ago. Their goal was always the same: create a land where everyone could live in peace, and heaven in heart. But that goal was tainted as one day, a vampire betrayed Elizabeth by feeding her with human blood. This triggered a violent reaction from Elizabeth. As human blood makes vampire minds go crazy, and the Blood Queen wasn't different. On her rampage she destroyed 2 kingdoms and since then never managed to overcome this guilt. Rimuru. It seems you're ready, then let's end this before the talk. The sword in his hand glowing, Rimuru dashed forward. At the same time, hundreds if not thousands of bloody blades formed around, ready to tear their enemy apart. In the splits of an instant, Rimuru appeared in front of the queen. No sound, no light. Nothing could follow what was going to happen. Only the scream of Mary begging this stop could be heard echoing through the room. She saw the smile on her queen's face. She was still the kind woman who wanted peace, but the guilt built in her just asked for death, to repent. Mary. Elizabeth-sama, we can still restart everything. Stretching her hand up in despair, she could only watch as a bright white light filled the room. The entire top of the tower was surrounded in a white sphere as 2 single words left Rimuru's mouth. Rimuru. Nova Blade. Elizabeth Pav. I smiled uncomfortably as blood gushed out of my mouth. Looking down, I could see the night sky returning to its normal state. The moon was clear again and everything was calm. Down there, I got a weird-looking sword piercing my abdomen. To think such a person existed. I was already impressed by this shadow guy, but to think there was even more. Elizabeth. What are you waiting for? When I was first resurrected, I still had the human sacrifice blood in my mouth. This made me rampage mindlessly, but now, I was totally conscious. It was stupid and horrible what I did. Fortunately, I killed only one person today, even if it was one of my own race. Rimuru. Did you not listen? I said I wanted to talk. I was a little bit stunned, but that was fine. I don't have much time left after all. I nodded and looked around for a brief moment. This was when I realized that something was wrong. Mary was on the ground, her hand still stretched toward us, but she wasn't moving. I looked up and saw that the clouds weren't moving either. Did time stop? Rimuru. Time hasn't stopped. It's rather that time is accelerated for us. As if reading my mind, he talked. I stared at him for a moment, not understanding, before returning my focus on Mary. I was wrong, she was moving, but slowly, to the point where she appeared frozen. Rimuru. This is another one of my spells, Nova Realm. We are basically in a small world of our own where a single second outside is equivalent to months here. What an incredible spell. But how can a human possess that? I had read and learned about ancient magic, but nothing like that was ever mentioned. Elizabeth. So what do you want from me? He finally smiled and did the unthinkable. The blade in his hand disappearing and my wound healed. Elizabeth. What are you doing, Rimuru? Don't yell, brat. Brat, doesn't he know that I'm thousands of years old? Well, if we count the years I passed away? I know I have a very young body, but still, I can't be considered a brat. Elizabeth. You. Rimuru. Anyway, let's make a deal. I immediately quieted down and the look in his eyes turned serious. I am not one to be intimidated easily, but this time, I really felt like standing in front of a mountain. The fresh air on the top fell upon me like a waterfall. What an intimidating presence. He was really out of the norm. I was for a long time considered as an anomaly with only a few names beside mine. The Witch of Calamity was one of them, but now, I feel like the truth anomaly is the man in front of me right now. Elizabeth. Tell me. Rimuru. What is your goal? I had heard the story of you, and from what I see right now, You aren't the vampire who destroyed 2 kingdoms, but just a kind woman who was misunderstood. My goal, huh? I unconsciously smiled remembering this promise I had made with Mary. Let's make our paradise on Earth. A place where everyone could live without the fear of war or conflict. Elizabeth. I want the best for the world. Rimuru. I see, then let me go straight to the point, I'll help you and you help me. Elizabeth. Excuse me but I don't seem to understand. Where is he getting at? Help me. Does he intend to make the paradise I dreamed of? But that's impossible. Not now after I lost everything. Rimuru. I will do everything to make your dream come true and in exchange, you will give me your undying loyalty. Elizabeth. So basically, you want me to work for you? He smirked. It was only now that I realized that the aura he released was one of a ruler, someone who knows how to deal with others as a leader. Rimuru. As a former prince, I had my own goal too. I might have failed once because of miscalculation but now, everything is aligned for me to succeed. Elizabeth. And what is your goal? I tensed up a little when he approached me, his face only a few inches from mine. He bent down until his mouth was beside my ear. I stood there unfazed as there was obviously no romance in this. Rimuru. I want. My eyes gradually widened as the words left his mouth. That's insane. His goal isn't something easy. Probably the fantasy of many but at the end it's just a sort of impossible dream. But when it came out of his mouth, I could actually picture the day he would succeed. Elizabeth. You really want that? Rimuru. Indeed, but don't misunderstand it. I don't need anyone to achieve it. I ask for help because I just don't want to lose myself once I achieve it. That's smart. What he is going for is a very lonely plane. But not only that, he has 2 paths ahead of him. One calm as the moon or chaotic as the sun. Elizabeth. I see. But you know your goal and mine aren't really matching. I glared at him lightly while backing away. His golden eyes followed me amused, as if he was playing with his food. Rimuru. You said you want everyone to live in peace but that's impossible as greed exists. Elizabeth. People can change, while greed exists. Hope and kindness too. Rimuru. If hope exists means despair too, having such concepts are defective just by their function. This shutted me down. I know my goal is like a fairy tale and probably something unrealistic, but I still believed. Rimuru. That's way, if you ally yourself to me and join my cause you will be able to see a glimpse of your heaven. Elizabeth. So he never intended to make my dream come true. This whole conversation was just a way for him to tell me that his goal was much more realistic and doable. And that my best bet would be to serve him. Truly, he manipulated this conversation, not this whole situation. He is only one of the only people who can kill me. I can't die by myself so even on this I have to rely on him. And if I ever had the thirst to live again, he had a sword right above me ready to strike me down. I'm caught in his trap. Elizabeth. I guess I have no choice but to agree. It seems, the blood progenitor so feared was now going to serve a human. Can he even be considered human thought? Rimuru. Good, and don't worry I promise you won't regret it. Third Pav turning around, Rimuru was about to turn off Nova Realm but before he could Elizabeth called him out. Elizabeth. Wait. Tell me, who are you really? Rimuru stopped right in his tracks, looking down for a moment until he finally turned his head toward the vampire and smirked. Rimuru. I am the future ruler of this world, Rimuru Nebula. Elizabeth felt chill down her spine as her mind reacted to the name Nebula, a kingdom she had known. When she was still young, the tale of this kingdom existed. It was already history but everyone knew the power held by this kingdom. Her own power was already learned from ancient and discovered books from the Nebula Kingdom. Elizabeth. You. Rimuru. Yes, I'm reincarnated. It's as if the world had given me a second chance and now I'm fully back. He was still Rimuru Kaganu but now his ambition and goal changed, as the prince of one of the strongest nations. Rimuru naturally had great ambition and his ultimate goal was always the same. He was at the end the ruler of a limited territory and the end goal for all rulers. To become the one who ruled all, Rimuru wasn't different but his motivation was, he wasn't doing this for power or wealth, he was doing it for himself. He wanted the world to remember his name as the one who finally united the world. But that plan was slowed and completely shut down when the church discovered this demon ore. But now, it's as he said, the world seemed to have given him a second chance, him the prince of everythingness. After that intense conversation, Elizabeth left with Mary. The situation was very confusing for the latter, but at the end, she was happy that her queen was finally back. Rimuru too left after getting Claire. He walked down the street of the lawless city with her in his hand. All the while, he looked at her with different emotions. She was basically his sister in both life. That's why he felt multiple weird emotions with her. After a few minutes, he suddenly halted as he felt someone approaching them. The night sky and silent city made it clear. Rimuru could hear the footsteps coming closer and closer. The individual approaching wasn't even hiding. Rimuru. You are still here, Beta? The silver-haired elf finally came out of the shadow. Beta. Yes, I came here to apologize. Rimuru. Don't mind it, I have a few changes of mind so everything is fine. Walking past her, Rimuru didn't bother with her and just wanted to leave, but before, his hand reached his pocket before throwing a small vial with a red liquid inside. Beta caught it a little bit startled before analyzing it. She didn't understand at first but then remembered the Shadow Garden goal in this. They wanted the blood progenitor's blood to experiment on it. Rimuru. Your mission is completed now. Beta. Hi. Bowing her head in gratitude, she soon after left in the same way she arrived. Rimuru continued to walk until the entrance of the lawless cut. He stared at the sky for a few minutes before using his power to teleport away. The next moment he was inside his mansion at the Midgard Kingdom. Claire was still sleeping in his hands, so he carefully put her in one of the guest rooms before leaving for his own. This was a tiring day, not physically but mentally. The memories were still registering in his brain. From now onward, it's lemon time. Finally, don't read it if you're not comfortable. He reached his room and opened his door before getting off guard as the pillow went flying toward him. He didn't bother to react, so the pillow landed right into his face. He didn't have much time to understand when he heard a cute squeal. Beatrix. Ah, sorry Rimuru. Quickly coming at his side, she removed the pillow and blushed as Rimuru stared at her with a blank look. Rimuru. What are you doing, Beatrix? Well. I forgot to close the window so a lot of mosquitoes entered. She stuttered a little before admitting her stupid and funny reason. She was trying to chase away the mosquito and ultimately this led her to throw some random thing across the room. Rimuru chuckled at her antics and stretched his arms. The room was then lit up in a white flash before going. Rimuru. Done, close the door before more enter. After eradicating them, Beatrix sighed in relief and did as she was told. She walked up to the window and closed it. This was only when Rimuru noticed her current clothes. Or rather lingeries, a bra and panties which were rather seductive. Rimuru felt entranced by her bouncy ass as she walked to the window. Now that he had his memories, he had a lot more experience. He was a prince and a beautiful powerful one at that. Naturally he had a lot of princesses or noblewomen going after him. But he never really loved someone. There were only a few women who actually managed to make his heart beat faster. And Beatrix was one of them. Rimuru was already quite bold before, but now, he had no restriction anymore. Beatrix. Kaya. The elf squealed as her man suddenly hugged her from behind, his cold hand adventuring around her body while he kissed her neck. She moaned lightly as his breath brushed her skin. He gradually went up her neck until he reached her ear. As the natural order of human instinct takes over, Beatrix and Rimuru shared the night together, both satisfying each other with the pleasure that the two would remember.